What's up, everybody? It's Sid and Millie back with another episode. We're doing another movie review. We just went to the theaters today and
Yeah,
saw what, Millie?
we saw Leviticus in theaters. So once again, just kind of staying on theme with going out to theaters, supporting, movie theaters and
Mm-hmm.
seeing movies in theaters. And so kind of on theme, we saw another horror movie, and this one was called Leviticus. So
Yep.
yeah.
So, basically, well, I don't know. You're so much better at doing little synopsises than I
Whoa,
am.
I don't know about that. But
You go,
okay,
yeah.
well, essentially, it is kind of like a forced conversion in a sense. Like it's like
Mm-hmm.
a small town that's got like church is kind of the centerpiece of the town, and essentially they have this pastor that comes in if anybody in the town is gay or deemed to be gay. They essentially have this pastor come in and essentially curse that person. And the curse kind of manifests in a pretty interesting way. Essentially, the person's main desire. So the person they desire, they see that person, and then they think that person is, talking to them, interacting with them, blah blah blah, and then it attacks them because it's actually the curse from the
Right.
person. Yeah, for the
Yeah,
pastor.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
So the main couple was, I mean, I guess we can't really call them a couple because it was
Right.
very like kind of closeted. Nobody really knew. It was kind of one of
Yeah.
those things where you don't really talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely don't say it,
Yeah, in the small
because
town. And they
it
had that
was a
kind of
very,
like bully, kind of like quiet new student like relationship. Like the
yes.
main character comment on that, like, oh, you don't talk to me in school or interact with me in school,
Hmm.
but then outside of school we're like hanging out. So
Completely
yeah.
different person, and then they're like kissing and wrestling and
Wrestling.
doing all the things.
Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely was like playing a lot on the religious aspects and kind
Yeah.
of the religious, I don't know what word I want to use, where
Mm.
they're just kind of like trying to suppress those sorts of feelings.
Yeah.
They're like, these are sins, you're sinning, like
Yeah.
we have to fix you. We have to, get
And what the
someone to
mom said,
exercise you,
protect you or
basically.
whatever.
Yeah. And then, right at the end of the movie,
Towards the end,
towards the
yeah.
end of the movie, the main character is like asking the mom, like, why have you done this? And she's like, oh, well, it's to protect you. And he's
Yeah.
like, I'm terrified now. I'm literally terrified. And she's like,
Yeah.
we must live in fear.
And it's just crazy
Yeah.
the religious element. But it started off essentially the guy that the main character is interested in, that he's kissed and hung out with after school. He sees him kissing and doing having the same sort of interaction with another guy,
Mm-hmm.
and that essentially provokes feelings of jealousy in the main
Yes.
character, who then snitches on the two of them.
Goes and tells their parents
Can you?
that they were
He
kissing in the
tells
backyard.
he himself is in a weird little situationship with another guy,
Yep.
sees him kiss someone else, and then goes and snitches to their parents.
I just think that's so crazy. Like, you surely know, because you're also not talking about it and not like
Right,
telling your mom.
right.
You know the ramifications
Yeah,
of that act.
100%.
And you still go and do it. You're walking around in the rain, it's all dramatic, and then
Yeah,
you have this epiphany and you're like, I'm going in the house and I'm telling on
yeah,
them,
that was crazy, massively unnecessary.
So
But
insane.
that essentially proceeds into this ceremony that happens at the church, where there's a bunch of people from town in at the church, and they're essentially watching this happen. And this pastor comes in. He does this, like, at first he's just like putting his hand on the guys. They're like
Right.
laughing, having a laugh, because they're just like, yeah, whatever, man.
Yeah, we've
And
had this
then
happen before, sort of
exactly,
thing.
yeah. And
Yeah.
then he pulls out this lighter. The lighter is like the main thing.
Yeah,
And
the
then whatever,
fire.
yeah, whatever
Yeah.
he did with the lighter, like when he lit it, they
And said
essentially
his
started like
thing.
convulsing, like throwing up, like all of this crazy stuff started
Yeah,
happening to
basically it
them.
was an exorcism.
Yeah, to
Yeah.
a degree. And it was,
Mm-hmm.
kind of hyping on like the I mean, like religious, sacrilegious belief or whatever you want to call it, essentially, which condemns like homosexuality, which we know is not actually written into the scripture. We know
Right.
that that is New Testament edited scripture that then like essentially, I don't know, like vilifies homosexuality.
Right.
But in this movie, it definitely highlights like a reality that people face in this country. Like there are religious conversion like theory camps where parents can send their kids and essentially force the parents' beliefs onto those children.
Yeah.
So like we do see that happening in real life. So it wasn't really that surprising to see that kind of highlighted in the film.
Yeah. Facts.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it really played on a very real thing that a lot of gay people go through when they're coming out to their
Yeah.
parents, to their families, to like a wide set of people
Yeah.
basically
Yeah.
who are not necessarily very accepting
Yeah.
of
Their
their
experience.
experience.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think it played a lot on that, which I thought was really good. It almost took that experience and dramatized it in a way that
Yeah.
made it like, this is what happens to you when you do this sort of thing. It's
Right.
like the things that people say when you're someone comes out as gay. Oh, well, you're going to go to hell, you're damned, whatever.
Yeah.
Like it kind of plays on that and shows, you know, the, I guess, almost ridiculousness, but also
Yeah.
like, I don't know, it
Well, it's just
evokes
like
like
also
that sort of,
hypocritical, right?
yeah.
It's like these people, the mom in the story, who like called the pastor without the son's knowledge. It's like you're essentially believing in this thing, in this conversion, and you think it's for like protecting your child, but then it's actually a curse that a pastor is placing on these people. So it's like the religion is what you're using to justify the anti-homosexuality, but then on the flip side, the religion is also the evil that is behind a curse that is being put on these people. So
Yeah,
it
that's
definitely
so
highlights
interesting.
like that, you know, the religion is hypocritical because on one end you're condemning these actions, but then on another end it's okay to summon a demon to curse people. No. Definitely not. Come on.
Yeah, that is crazy. And what did you think of the concept of what they did with the curse?
It was interesting, like definitely playing on kind of a theme that we've been seeing in some scary movies where like you don't really know what's real or fake or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So like the main character didn't really know if this person that they were interacting with was the actual person.
Right.
And that was always scary because it turned into like in a very abrupt attack. Like they would be like kissing and like acting normal, and then out of nowhere they're like strangling the main character and slamming them up against
Yes,
something.
literally, because his friend, I don't know, because they weren't
Yeah.
really like in a relationship or
Right,
anything.
right.
So, um, he was seeing it first
Yep.
because he had gone through the conversion, I guess exorcism
Yeah.
first, and
Got the
like
curse. Yeah.
was starting to see. So basically, the curse makes you see the person that you desire most.
Right. Right.
And so he started to see the main character, and that's how the like person who was essentially trying to kill him was manifesting as the main character.
Right.
So when the main character followed him to the ice skating rink,
Yep.
he was like trying to see what was going on because it looked like he was talking to nobody and then
Yeah.
was following
Took
someone or
pictures
like,
with nobody.
yeah, and then he was in the photo booth taking
Yeah.
photos and he was looking at the photos and it was just the guy and it looked like he was
Empty space.
making out with nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then yeah, heard some like big bang and then looked in the photo booth and he's like being
Getting strangled,
choked.
and the thing was like invisible, so you can't
Mm-hmm.
see it, but you could see like the marks around his neck,
Right.
and he was being like held up in the air.
Yes,
Yeah.
like only the person who's cursed could see it, and it was
Yeah.
like it only comes around when you're alone
Right.
was the other thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
um
Yeah, and the kind of interesting element, I guess, like with the whole thing about like only being seen by like the main person, right? It kind of creates that like delusion in their mind, right?
yeah.
So they're having that good experience with this person, and then it is not that person.
Right.
So it really messes up like their perception of reality and like that whole element. And of course, like I said, like they were very abrupt when it was like switching from like kissing to like grabbing the neck.
Yeah, because then it also, I guess, like the point of the curse was to make you not desire that person anymore.
Right,
And like,
yeah, because yeah, you were supposed to, again, going into the whole religious element, like fight against the desire. So
right.
they, again, making it seem as if like homosexuality is a decision that people are making rather than a way that people are born, which we know is the truth. But in this film, it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
highlighting the fact that religion just won't even address that element of it. It's like making it seem like, oh, you're making this choice, so yeah, you can fight against this desire. And
Right.
it's just like, no, you're missing the entire point if that's your belief. But oftentimes religious arguments do miss the entire
Yeah,
point.
that's true.
So yeah,
Very
there's
true.
also that element to it. So it definitely called on like some of those hypocrisies that are religion based hypocrisies, you know. So
Mm-hmm. That's
um
a good point.
yeah, and then there was something else we talked about afterwards, essentially, where we were chatting about how awkward and kind of painful some of the silences in the movie were.
Oh, yeah, there was
Uh,
a very strong lack of dialogue.
yeah, particularly between like the two main male characters,
Mm-hmm.
and it, for us, it was kind of highlighting the fact that like because of the hyper religiousness of the adults in the film, like the kids themselves didn't have people to talk to. They couldn't chat to their parents. They didn't have a safe space of someone they could talk about
Mm-mm.
these feelings they were having, which were totally normal feelings for high schoolers.
Of
But they
course.
didn't have that safe space that they could talk to, so they were kind of fumbling through these new feelings and experiences on their own. And neither of them could actually like articulate what they were feeling. And they didn't
Facts.
have anybody to do so to.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, that
Yeah.
definitely kind of played on the silence and kind of like
Yeah.
almost depression that you were seeing in the
Yeah.
film.
Yeah.
Um, and I also thought it was interesting as well that the main character,
Mm-hmm.
he was able to kind of see the attacks that were happening,
Right.
which like nobody else really seemed like they were able to see that, but he somehow was present for
Right.
like
A
two
few
of
of
them.
them. Yeah.
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 So I thought that was pretty interesting because like why was he able to see them getting
Right.
attacked?
Well, I think he was like suspicious about what
Yeah.
was going on, like especially when he followed his guy, right? Like he was kind of like, what is this essence? Like, what is the thing? And he
Mm-hmm.
asked, he went and talked to someone, the woman who had experienced the same thing with her partner previously, kind of how the movie opened. We watched like a woman go into a shower, be like, oh, what are
Yep.
you doing here? And then
And we were like,
everything was normal, and
no
then
one's
boom,
there.
she literally gets killed by this entity. But we learn later in the film that she was in a relationship with another woman that also had this pastor come and curse them.
Yep.
And so he went and chatted to her, so he was a little bit suspicious that something nefarious was going
Well,
on.
him and the other guy went.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So they both were just like trying to figure it out, but
Mm-hmm.
again, it was just something where it was just like one of those unseen things. And I think the message at the end, kind of the theme, was just like that love prevails. Like
Yeah.
they ended up, even though they would see each other and attack each other if it wasn't actually them, if it was the desired individual,
Mm-hmm.
but in the end they chose that it was still best to be together and be with each other, and they left town together.
Yeah.
And
And
that,
loved the Frank Ocean song right at the end.
yeah, it was so
Devastating.
nice.
That was
Yeah, it was
perfect.
like a nice little cherry on top. So they wrapped
Mm-hmm.
it up really
They
nicely
did. Yeah.
with that theme that like love prevails, and you know you should lean into love. And I really appreciated that because the whole anti love movement is just ridiculous, right?
True.
Like if it doesn't impact your life, why do you care about it? You know,
Facts. It's
it's just
none of your
crazy. Yeah,
business.
it's like no one should be having their heads in other people's relationships
Relationships.
or
Yeah.
affairs or anything that's going on. Like mind your own business, live your own life, focus on yourself, and you'll be a much happier person in the process. Like as
100%.
soon as you start trying to dictate the way other people live, you know, that reflects poorly on you and you
Mm-hmm.
alone. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's honestly the perfect little but one
Yeah.
time.
Well,
What
okay. Well,
else?
how would you rate like the scariness? Obviously, it was a horror film, so it had a
Mm-hmm.
good story, so to speak. But what did you think in terms of like a scary factor?
I definitely thought that the scariness, there was some jump scares.
Yeah, yeah,
There was a couple of like gross parts with the blood and everything like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But I wouldn't say it was super scary. It was a lot of
Facts.
those kind of like quiet moments and a lot of build up and not a
Yeah.
lot of, I guess, like fear, I guess,
Exactly.
because
Yeah.
the entity manifests as a person. So it
Right.
wasn't like we saw a being that was like huge and scary and like
Right.
some sort of devil looking thing that was
Right.
like
Yeah.
preying on people. They just
Yeah. It
like,
wasn't really anything like
yeah,
that.
so it was
Yeah.
kind of the scary factor was really just like not really knowing what's real, and
Yeah.
like,
Just like suspense.
yeah,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
kind of don't really know what's gonna happen.
Hear that.
But yeah, so I would say that's my thoughts
Valid.
on
So I
that. What
guess
about
if you had to rate
yourself?
it, oh,
Oh,
okay, yeah, I'll do
you
my
want me to
like
rate those
summary.
scary
Yeah,
factor?
but I'll give a little summary
Okay.
like you did. I kind of think like exactly the same way. Some jump scares, some kind of awkward moments, but I too do think the suspense was building for a little bit too long. I think the movie started with something kind of gruesome in the murder,
Mm-hmm.
and we kind of got introduced to the entity that was committing these acts. But then there was like a long space of time before we saw that entity in action again. Like there was a lot of
Right.
story build up and backstory that kind of had to build back to those moments, where we would have probably preferred to be like interacting with that more often and like experiencing those scares and jumps and the gruesomeness a little bit more throughout,
Yeah.
because it was a little bit isolated throughout.
Yeah,
Um,
agreed. I would say
yeah.
like rating wise, I'd give it a 4 or 5 for scary
Okay.
factor.
Yeah. So for the horror category,
Yeah,
yeah.
it wasn't
Um,
too scary in my
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah. I don't think for scariness it really even brushed like anything too crazy. I would agree with you, like a 4 or 5
Yeah.
for scariness. I think in a similar fashion to maybe even like Disclosure Day, I would say like the storyline itself was very good.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the premise of like love prevails and those sorts of things. So I'll kind of give a consolation rating, which would be a 7 out of 10 for like the story itself. I
Mm-hmm.
love the representation. I love the LGBTQ representation. I think
Yes.
that's massively important in film, in movies, for people to see and experience. It really isn't anything different. It's just a movie.
Yeah.
You go to enjoy the story and the artists that put it together.
Facts.
And I
And it
think,
was in Australia, which I
yeah, it was
also thought was
Australian
interesting.
based. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that was pretty cool. You heard some mate. You heard some mates in there, from down under. But yeah, I think overall, like the story and the premise were like really good, really strong.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely liked like some of the things that it like addressed and highlighted in there.
Yeah.
Kind of like the lack of education, the lack of people to talk to, kind of the weaponization of religion, that hypocrisy of religion. All of
A
those
lot of
things
things.
tied in, and then the underlying message just being that love is love and love who you love.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. So I definitely want to give a little shout out for that element of the storyline, for sure.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
think that, kind of on what we're talking about in terms of like the horror category, I think some films and some filmmakers, it is okay to call your movie a thriller. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think when we slide into horror category, it kind of creates a certain level of expectation. Whereas like if it's a thriller, we kind of then are okay with more suspense and more build and
Yeah,
things.
exactly. You're not really like waiting for something, like waiting for
Yeah,
the gore, like the jump scares or things like
right.
that, which they had a couple jump scares,
Yeah,
but
they
like
did. They did.
it wasn't really anything too
Too crazy.
crazy.
Yeah, definitely not. So I think, if you're gonna use that categorization of horror film, like we have a certain level of demand in terms of the fear
Yeah.
that we want to feel throughout the film. We want to feel the creepy crawlies on the skin. We want to hear the music. We want to hear like those elements and that really keep us engaged throughout the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So that people aren't checking out during those like quiet silences between
Mm-hmm.
two awkward lovers. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, those were our thoughts on the new movie Leviticus that we just saw in theaters.
Yeah. If you made it this far,
Thanks for watching.
see you next time.
Peace.
Bye.